We're not doing a podcast, but we are now. Mark Weber and Jarrett Least. And Jarrett, I'm thinking that maybe we just scrap the whole sports part of this podcast because when we talked about the Kardashians, that was our most popular YouTube short segments ever.
Well, you know what? Honestly, who needs to talk about sports? I'd rather talk about, we were just before we came on talking about how I walked over to Fairway and got some prepared foods and getting into reading books. Maybe I should
We
even
didn't
just,
discuss the books part. We have discussed that, but we did not discuss that before.
but in general, you know what? Honestly, who needs sports? This is honestly the most boring sports week of the season because there's no baseball, football's not in action, NBA Summer League doesn't count, the
It
NHL.
does. It counts for everything. It is the most exciting sports event of the entire year. Give me it. Who says this is a boring time in sports in the summer league?
And then your sick, twisted mind, I guess it counts as entertaining sports. That's the problem with the NBA. It's like the season ends, and then 2 weeks later, there's basketball games. It's like we don't need that much basketball. It's stupid. So outside of sports, we were talking about the Kardashian, the Hamptons party, which is right up my alley. And maybe over time we're gonna continue to do a podcast, but maybe we'll talk about other stuff like restaurants to go to, books to read, TV shows to watch, things to do in our lives. Sports, honestly, they just bring stress. It's kind of stupid, honestly. Who needs them?
All right. Well, one season that is going on is Major League Baseball, unfortunately, for New York sports fans, as it is just a rough go around for both the Yankees and Mets. The Yankees are still in the wild card hunt. The Mets, you could argue whether they are or they aren't because they are 7 games out. Judging by how both teams are doing this season, should both the Yankees and Mets be buyers, or should one be a seller and the other should be a buyer?
Well, as far as the Mets go, there's just not much to sell. To answer the question, no, they should not be buyers under any circumstance. Buy what? So they can finish 4 games out of a playoff spot? I mean, Billy Epler would do something like that just to save his job because Billy Epler is totally incompetent. But the Mets should not buy anything. And if there's stuff to sell, maybe trade off David Robertson if you could get some. You're not going to get anything great in return for a guy like David Robertson or a Tommy Pham. But one name actually I would say maybe for the Yankees would be Tommy Pham. They need a left fielder. I don't think JuanSoto is all that realistic this season. I still think the Padres are going to try to go for it with him still under team control for the rest of this year and next year. But maybe Tommy Pham could fit a guy like the Yankees. So for the Yankees, they're a game out of a playoff spot. They're in it. They obviously need number 99 to come back. That's the missing ingredient to everything for that team. But they need a left fielder. They've had 9 left fielders play for the team all season, which is just ridiculous when you're at the All-Star break. That many guys have played in left field. So maybe just the Mets and Yankees could pull off a trade. Maybe Brian Cashman should call up his old pal, Billy Epler, and say, what would it take to get Tommy Pham in a Yankees uniform? Would that be something you would be intrigued by?
Who would the Mets get in return for Tommy Pham? I think he'd be a terrible fit for the Yankees because he's just not really a great fielder and he's having a great start. Guys like Cody Bellinger are probably a more realistic option. I mean, throw Brent Rooker out there for the Oakland A's. The Oakland A's shouldn't have anyone good. They should be selling every asset possible before they hopefully sell that sad excuse of a franchise. That's a guy that the Yankees should go for. Cody Bellinger is definitely another, but who would the Yankees trade for someone like Tommy Pham, who I don't think would be a good fit at all personally?
Well, look, he plays left field and he's been having a great season. And as far as what the Mets get in return, they're not getting anything. Tommy Pham's on a 1-year deal. It's a rental. He's 35 years old. It would just be the type of thing where the Mets are not going to re-sign Tommy Pham in the offseason. So just trade him for, I don't know, the Yankees' 35th best prospect. The 35th best prospect on the Yankees is better than not trading him at all. And the Mets are going nowhere. So they should just trade off whatever they got, Well, look, Tommy Pham, he's been having a very good season. And the fact that, honestly, Tommy Pham may be the best Mets player this year just says everything about how pathetic this season has gone for the Mets. But look, the Yankees, that's really all they need. They just need some bats. They don't need bullpen help. They don't need starting rotation help. They got Carlos Rodon back. Pitching wise, I think they're fine, but you want to try to inject some sort of life into that lineup. And that's the other thing also, when it comes to the trade deadline, teams just aren't trading top-notch players as much as in years past. So I just think you're only going to get potential rentals, and maybe a guy like Tommy Pham would be the best option for the Yankees at this point in time.
As you mentioned with the New York Yankees, bats are the major question. 28th in batting average. The only team with a worse batting average than the New York Yankees this season are the Oakland A's, the worst franchise in Major League Baseball. Now, in the All-Star game, Derek Jeter, in a segment called What Trade Would You Propose?, offered that the Yankees should go for someone like JuanSoto. Jared, why would this be incredibly unrealistic for the Yankees? And is Derek Jeter kind of living in the past when it comes to who the Yankees are now?
Well, look, as far as a trade goes, I don't think that aspect of it is unrealistic. If the Padres are willing to put JuanSoto on the trade block, I could see the Yankees getting involved. And the other thing also is, the closer JuanSoto gets to free agency, teams are going to be less willing to trade legitimate prospects. Only a team that has the potential to actually re-sign JuanSoto after the 2024 season would really be in the market for him. So I think that dwindles the amount of teams that he can go to. And JuanSoto in the past has said he loves playing in New York. He's had great career numbers when he's played against the Mets at Citi Field. And as far as the Yankees potentially maybe trying to trade for him, you get him in pinstripes for the next year and a half. That keeps him maybe away from the Mets, because let's just say Shohei Ohtani isn't a Met this offseason. I am taking it to the bank that JuanSoto will be a Met after the 2024 season. Steve Cohen will empty the checkbook to bring JuanSoto to New York, but looking at a guy like Shohei Ohtani, he's probably not realistic for either New York team. So I think the Yankees should really look into trying to trade for JuanSoto this trade deadline. It would be a big time move for them.
The Yankees didn't go for Soto during the last trade deadline. A lot of fans did. A lot of New Yorkers had some passionate takes about this, including an Uber driver I once had that almost fought me over whether or not the Yankees or Mets should trade for a guy like Soto. My opinion, if you want to know it, I said either of them absolutely should. He's that great of a player. His excuse was he's not much of a winner, which was kind of a weird thing to say, considering JuanSoto has won a World Series at the beginning of his career, and it caused a very awkward Uber drive. And no tip on that one, because the two of us were going at it with JuanSoto. Probably why my rating is currently a 4.82. Aside from that, should the Yankees have made that, or the Mets have made that move last season, or does it not really matter given his contract situation?
Well, look, going back to last year, the Mets should have been more aggressive at the trade deadline as opposed to just going and getting guys like Daniel Vogelback and Michael Givens and Tyler Naquin and Darren Ruff. Long live Darren Ruff. But it just wasn't realistic that the Nationals were going to trade JuanSoto to the Mets. That was never going to happen. They were going to trade him in the division. They were going to send him to a place where they didn't have to see him as many times as they would against a division opponent. But the Yankees should have been more aggressive. I absolutely think they should have been much more into trying to get JuanSoto last summer, because we see it with the Yankees. Come postseason time, their Achilles heel is they just don't hit enough. And look, Aaron Judge, he's a great Yankee. He's an all-time Yankee. Number 99 is going to be retired, but He's not been the greatest postseason performer. You can't pin everything on him, but the Yankees need more offense in that lineup. And JuanSoto, quite frankly, he's the perfect fit for the Yankees with that short right field porch in Yankee Stadium. He would be absolutely phenomenal there, but it remains to be seen. I still don't think the Padres are going to trade JuanSoto this trade deadline, but in the offseason, it remains to be seen. It could be a possibility.
Aaron Judge is kind of tough to say. He's not the greatest postseason performer, considering that he does have 13 home runs in his postseason career with the Yankees in 44 games, which is really impressive. But one thing that seems to never get fixed for the New York Mets is their young prospects and how to handle them. Jarrett, you were very pessimistic when I texted you asking your thoughts on the Mets selecting Colin Hawke with the 32nd pick. Now, I know rankings for basketball rankings for high school players, football rankings mean absolutely nothing. MLB.com's rankings for the pre-draft should not really make that much of a difference, but Hawke was ranked 12th among all prospects. Jared, why are you so hard on the Mets drafting a guy like Colin Hawke when some of the high school players they have drafted in recent years include Brett Beatty and Jet Williams and Jared?
When it comes to the Mets, it's the type of thing where until the infrastructure of the organization changes, I'm not going to believe that they're just going to come up with a pipeline of young players that are going to come up to the major leagues and produce right away. You see teams like the Atlanta Braves, they lose guys like Dansby Swanson, Freddie Freeman, and it doesn't matter to them. They just keep churning out top prospects. It's all about how you have an infrastructure within your organization. And the Mets clearly don't seem to have that yet. When Steve Cohen bought the team a few years ago, that was his main point of emphasis, was creating long-term sustained success. And you knew it wasn't going to happen overnight, but you just want to see, with all the resources that Steve Cohen has, continue to put it into the scouting and development of minor league players. Because, look, Brett Beatty's come up and he's been a top prospect, but he's been okay so far. He hasn't been anything special.
You regret the Mets calling him up so early then, considering he has a OPS plus of around the 80s?
No, I don't. No, they should call up the rest of the young prospects. They should have Ronnie Mauricio come up and Mark Vientos come up.
So you're going not only full sell mode, but just call up all the young prospects and just wave that white flag of the season and just wait for JuanSoto to come in free agency. That's what you want for the Mets right now.
Well, the white flag has been waved for 2023.
You're anti what Terry Collins said by that they should still go for it, even though they are 7 games out of the wild card spot.
He's saying that on SNY. It's just pure propaganda. If I was on SNY, I would probably say, well, the Mets should consider buying, because I wouldn't believe half the shit I would say if I was on SNY. Okay. So let's be honest here. The Mets 2023 is a lost cause. But they'll try to compete in 2024, but it just remains to be seen what the philosophy will be with Steve Cohen, because when you have a $355 million payroll and your record's 42-48 at the All-Star break, you are going to reconsider how you go about business. Yes, he's always going to be willing to spend money. He's going to outspend the second highest payroll in baseball, but it's not an endless pit of money that Steve Cohen has. It comes down to scouting and developing young talent. And to this point, it just doesn't look great from the Mets perspective. And quite frankly, even bringing the Yankees into the equation too, it's not like it's been great on their end either. I mean, look, Anthony Volpe's
top 3 in WAR for this team this year. I mean, he's been very good. The batting average isn't there, but overall production, he's no Corey Seager, who's someone that they really should have got, but Volpe is a top productive player for the Yankees this season, especially on a team that is a potential playoff team going this year.
But where's the young talent coming through the Yankees pipeline? I mean, your
I
third
just said
baseman.
Anthony Volpe. He's the young talent that's coming through their pipeline and has been successful. At 21 years old, became a major league player.
That's one guy, though. The Yankees need a left fielder. They need a third baseman. Anthony Rizzo is an older first baseman. You got DJ LeMahieu. You need a pipeline of young talent to continue to come up. Like what I was saying, the Yankees have played 9 left fielders this year. And you go to a team like the Atlanta Braves. They don't miss a beat when they lose Dansby Swanson and Freddie Freeman because they have a plethora of young prospects ready to go. It's not just one guy. You can't pin your hopes on one guy being this franchise savior. And if you compare Anthony Volpe to some of the other top prospects in baseball, Anthony Volpe's nothing, quite frankly. He's overrated by New York standards. He's a solid player, but you compare him to some of the other insane prospects throughout baseball. Ellie De La Cruz, Corbin Carroll, all the guys that the Atlanta Braves churn out. I mean, several years, but Ronald Acuna, I mean, those are guys that are superstar talents. And forgetting about superstars, it's all about quantity, quite frankly. You need multiple guys to come up through your system on a year in, year out basis because injuries happen every year. And when injuries happen, you got to be prepared to call up someone in your farm system. And that's something that the Mets and Yankees just right now don't really have.
I think for Volpe, he's outpacing where Yankee fans thought he'd be. The fact of the matter is the Yankees should have got a veteran shortstop, whether it is Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, or Corey Seager. Corey Seager probably would have been that best guy. Corey Seager compared to Carlos Correa, you would have to take Seager just based off of production and not because of injuries. And look, out of the 3 of them, Seager was the only one that was an all-star. So it is very hard to justify having Anthony Volpe over a guy like Corey Seager. I think for the Yankees, it's, yeah, the prospects haven't turned out the way they liked, but you also have to know when to get veteran talent. And the Yankees were in a position all offseason when they should have got a left fielder, and they sat on their hands and did absolutely nothing. And it's very hard to be convinced of yourselves as a fan that they're going to do anything at the deadline either. So it's a very tough situation for the Yankees going forward, really for the fans, because they don't know what the Yankees are going to do because they feel like they're just going to stand pat. Brian Cashman doesn't care because he has a job for life. I've said this over and over again on the podcast, and it's just the frank truth. I mean, it's the honest truth. Volpe has been good. And yes, you can't pin your hopes on just one prospect. I mean, look at the way that they've had pitchers that come up, have a little success, and then really just fall apart, like Luis Severino, Jabba Chamberlain, Phil Hughes. Jabba Chamberlain and Phil Hughes had to be relievers. There's conversations that maybe Luis Severino has to do the same. And those conversations have been going on since 2016. Then he has a great 2018 season, gets injured. And then you're having those conversations again. I mean, there has to be a lot of changes off the top when it comes to Brian Cashman and the way that they're developing prospects. But yeah, it is pretty ugly for both New York baseball teams. But moving on to a team that has some promise, according to Jarrett, the New York Jets, they will be on Hard Knocks this summer. Jarrett, what is the most excited thing that you are looking forward to as the Jets take on HBO's Hard Knocks?
Underratedly, I think it's got to be Michael Clemens. He's someone who he says nothing. He says 2 or 3 words whenever he's on camera, and he's the most terrifying human being probably in the NFL. The HBO cameras are going to find him, and he's just going to scare the living shit out of the HBO camera people, and that's just going to be entertaining. So a lot of people are going to want to tune in to Michael Clemens, and Robert Sala's nickname for Michael Clemens is Debo. So that dynamic is really going to be something to watch. There's so many things, though, in terms of just the actual nitty-gritty of this football team. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be must follow. He always has something interesting to say.
Do you think that there's going to be too much Aaron Rodgers, that it's just going to be the Aaron Rodgers show? Because like you said, there's definitely a lot of guys on the Jets that are very entertaining, but the HBO cameras may be a little too focused on Rodgers because he is the big star and the household name.
they'll know what to do. It'll be the type of thing where probably the first episode, Aaron Rodgers will be front and center. They'll talk about how he's changing the culture of the franchise, and then they'll delve into other topics. They'll probably dive into how Zach Wilson's progressing. They'll also talk about the offensive and defensive rookies of the year, and Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, and you'll throw in Nathaniel Hackett. There's a lot of storylines with this version of Hard Knocks, and quite frankly, I think this is going to be one of the best Hard Knocks in its history, probably second to the Jets Hard Knocks going back to 2010. Because
you watch Hard Knocks when the Jets are not in it, because just personally, I've only watched it when the Jets are in it. So 2010 was pretty much the only time. Before that, I did the Bengals with Chad Ochocinco. That was really fun. Ochocinco is a big personality, but then once the Jets were in it, I kind of lost interest unless the Jets were in it, and it's very hard to get on Hard Knocks because they only pick a team once every 10 years. You have to not make the playoffs in the last 2 years. You have to not have a first-year head coach. There's a lot of things that the league allows, but it's kind of weird that the first time since 2010, I'll be watching Hard Knocks, but I know I don't make a difference either, but I know you're a bigger football fan. You're not into Hard Knocks at all if the Jets are in it. That's what I'm getting the sense.
Well, the thing was, after the Jets were in 2010, all the other seasons were just not good at all, and you just didn't hear any great reviews about any of the other teams that were in it. So I think the Jets are probably the most polarizing team in the NFL this year, love or hate. So people are going to tune in. It's a New York team. The Jets have the longest postseason drought in the NFL. They haven't won a Super Bowl since 1969. There's so many intriguing storylines in a love-hate way that are going to catch eyeballs to Hard Knocks this season. And it's going to be great for HBO. HBO needs a little something going on right now because Succession's done, and what else is on HBO these days? It's been
The Idol's off, so there's that. Their show that was coming after Succession, that was off after like 5 episodes. So they don't really have anything cooking. So thankfully they have the Aaron Rodgers show. The one guy that I'm looking forward to the most on Hard Knocks for the Jets is Robert Saleh. Now, in case you haven't been able to tell from past episodes, I am not the biggest Robert Saleh fan. I think he is way, way too much of a hardo, way too much of a people pleaser. And I think that this could make or break his personality off the field, because it could make him look like a really great story. He has a very emotional pull with his family in 9/11, and he is very personable in interviews and with fans. But Saleh could be a bit of what us Jews call a bit of a schmuck when it comes to the running up the stairs before the games, the all gas and no brakes. Saleh is just such a character, and I'm going to be very interested to see how they portray him on Hard Knocks, more so than Aaron Rodgers, because I think Aaron Rodgers, he knows how to work the cameras. He's been doing this for a long time. He's been doing this longer than anyone else on this team, including Saleh. Robert Saleh, I'm the most interested in, and it's also because how they made Rex Ryan look, and Rex Ryan's legacy is really tied to Hard Knocks in 2010. Let's go get a goddamn snack.
Well, that's where it's going to be disappointing when you have Robert Saleh featured on the show, because you're not comparing him to Rex Ryan. But
I'm not comparing him to Rex Ryan, but I think he is a unique personality, and it's just such a bizarre guy. He's like the guy at the gym that's always working out for 2 hours, grunting, lifting weights, not making small talk with anyone, hogging the machines. Yeah, there's probably a few people in mind that I have when I'm saying this, but that's who Saleh is. He's a weird dude, and I hope they portray him as a weird dude.
Have you seen pictures of Robert Saleh wearing a golf polo? The dude he doesn't miss arm day. I mean, he probably doesn't work out any other part of his body.
His muscles, he's jacked. Show when he wears an Islander jersey. That's how big Robert Saleh is.
Oh, he is absolutely jacked. But look, they'll show him having some like pre-practice film sessions with the team. That'll be somewhat entertaining, but he's not going to say much of anything substantial, because you're going to always have in the back of your mind, oh, this guy's no Rex Ryan. Like he also is not much of a cursor, Robert Saleh. The only thing he really says, he always says friggin'. Maybe he'll
all gas and no brakes.
Maybe he'll drop. It's you take out the S, it's all gas, no brake. So you got to get that right when it comes to Robert Saleh. That's one thing that he always gets annoyed with. It's all gas, no brake, but it is what it is with him. He'll be somewhat intriguing in the show, but people will compare him to Rex, and it'll be somewhat of a disappointment. But I think also the quarterback room of Rodgers and Wilson is going to be fun to watch. Who knows what HBO says about Zach Wilson? You know they're gonna like somewhat pile on, like they're gonna throw jabs at him, unfortunately. And
as long as they don't include his mom, I'm good with that.
No, they won't do that. They won't do that. But they'll throw in, the biggest bust in NFL history. Zach Wilson lurks to learn from Aaron Rodgers. They'll do stuff like that, and Aaron Rodgers will try to take him under his wing, but I'm excited for it.
Deep in the hills of Florham Park, New Jersey, the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers comes to save the Jets to get their first Super Bowl appearance since Broadway Joe in 1969. That was pretty good.
Jesus Christ. Oh, my God.
All right, moving on to entertaining TV.
What is wrong with both of us? We are sick.
Moving on to entertaining TV. Jarrett mentioned Succession before. Jarrett has also finally finished The Bear. Big part of the show is I just love to talk about what Jarrett is doing when he's not on the podcast. Jarrett, you just finished The Bear this week. What is the better show, Succession or The Bear? If you had to pick one.
The answer is easy. It's Succession, but The Bear deserves a ton of credit. Now, as I was watching The Bear, I was texting you watching season 1. I'm like, the show's good. It's solid, but it needs to grow a little more on me. I kept watching and season 1 finished, and it was good. Nothing bad to say about it, but I was internally thinking it's not really worth this amount of hype. And then season 2 just was incredible. There's some people who are saying that season 2 of The Bear is better than season 4 of Succession. Now, I disagree with that, because how can you say
those people are wrong? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's season 4 of Succession. Each season of Succession is an all-timer. So to answer the question, Succession is without a doubt the better show, because quite frankly, as much as I love Carmen, I like Richie on the show, I will remember Logan Roy for the rest of my life. When I'm an angry old man working in my office as a senile 80-year-old, I will probably pee in my office and tell everyone to fuck off. I remember.
Why would you mention the peeing in the office?
Because I'll be senile. I'll probably be senile. I won't know which way I'm going anymore. So, but that's memorable from Logan Roy when in the beginning stage of Succession. He's a memorable character. So, it is what it is. But Succession, it's all time for me. I feel like you'd agree with me on that.
All right. Well, remind me to stay away from your office when you turn 80 years old. They want to stay away from there. I'm not a big public urination guy. That belongs in
senile. When you're senile, it's going to happen.
Still, we've all known old people it's happened to, but I don't want to see you be that guy. I'll just stay away from you in the office. Just give me a warning. Flash a light or something if it's going to happen.
I won't be able to warn you. I'll be senile.
That is true, but I don't know. Maybe we just only meet up in bathrooms and stuff like that, and that way, if it happens, you just start going. I'm definitely a big Succession over The Bear fan. I love The Bear. I think The Bear season 2 was phenomenal television. My hot take is Fishes, episode 6 of season 2, highly overrated. My problem with that episode was that it felt like too many stars were watching it last year in season 1, called their agents. And remember, always blame the agents. How do I get on the show? And they just kind of threw that episode together to show the Bear family and how they're a bunch of misfits. It just seemed forced. And I know they brought up the A game with writing, but I didn't love it. Forks, however, I will say, goes in between the Succession series finale as number 3, then Forks, episode 7 of season 2 of The Bear, and then Connor's Wedding, the episode where, spoiler alert, Logan Roy dies, number 1. Those are the top 3 episodes of 2023 and probably some of the best 3 episodes of television I've personally ever seen.
I do agree with you. And I didn't really think about that until you mentioned it, when you're bringing in the old, like some big time actors and actresses onto that.
Yeah, even Jamie Lee Curtis said she was watching The Bear and they mentioned the mom and she called her agent and was like, I need to play the mom.
Yeah.
Like, no, let someone else play the mom. You just got nominated for an Oscar. Stop it.
And that episode was, I think, the longest episode by far of the entire series to this point. And
Fork should have been just as long.
I'm all for flashback scenes, but sometimes a flashback episode, it can kind of bore you a little bit because you ultimately want to get to the point of, okay, what happened then is causing to happen now. Like, you don't need a 60+ minute episode of that. You could have gotten to the point of how the family is just absolutely psychotic and how the mother drives through the house and everyone's just all batshit crazy. But each episode of season 2 just picked up. And the finale to me was phenomenal. I mean, when Carmen gets locked into the fridge and then Claire overhears him, what he has to say and how he just completely blew his shot with the girl who's absolutely admired him throughout their whole lives. The show really had everything in season 2. And I'm very excited to see season 3. It definitely left you on a cliffhanger going into the next season, which is ultimately the sign of great television.
All right, so we're going to leave you on a cliffhanger at the end of this episode because we may be recording a live episode, not a live episode, but a episode recorded in the Hamptons. That may be a possibility. If not, you'll have to wait till next week. So that's the cliffhanger for us. For Jarrett Lease, I am Mark Weber. We're not doing a podcast. We just did another episode during the quietest week in sports. Some may say it's the most exciting because we had a lot to talk about. Still some topics we didn't get to talk about. We will potentially see you again this week or next week. Another cliffhanger for you folks.